Many of these concepts, you would be familiar with them if you had done ITIL 4 or even some from V3. But there are some new ones. For example, the digital product vendor is totally new to ITIL here. Let's begin by understanding what an organization is. Definitions are important for the exam, so let's read them out. A person or a group of people that has its own functions with responsibilities, authorities, and relationships to achieve its objectives. And on the right side, we see an organization may be a company, which is a legal entity. It can be also a portion of a legal entity, maybe like a department within that company or like a set of teams within that company. It can also be a group of legal entities, a group of companies, such as a joint venture, or it can be a mix of all of these types. And it can also be just one person, sole proprietor kind of situation, or it can be multinational or anything in between. So there is a lot of flexibility in what an organization is, while we have the definition of an organization, a group of people or a person that has its own functions with responsibilities, authorities, and relationships to achieve its objectives. So the organization terminology comes within the context of the service relationships. Let us look at the organization's roles in service relationships. We have the service provider, service consumer, and digital product vendor. Service provider is an organization responsible for the delivery and support of services. Service consumer, on the other hand, an organization responsible for the procurement and use of services, meaning the consumer will use the services provided by the service provider. Then we have the digital product vendor, an organization responsible for the creation and continual improvement of digital products and related service offerings. I've been just reading the definitions, but a lot more clarity is coming up soon. So let us understand the organization's roles in service relationships. The roles, for example, sponsor, customer, user, they apply to the consumer organization. So therefore, the roles apply to a specific service relationship. Therefore, or a specific organization type. Therefore, all organizations play service provider and service consumer roles, which means that every organization is typically both a consumer and a provider. And if there is no service relationship, then the roles do not exist. Some service providers are also a digital product vendor. So what we mean to say here is, in a service relationship, an organization is either a provider, a consumer, a digital product vendor, or a combination of these. So when an organization defines its purpose and strategy, it also decides on the roles it will be playing in service relationships, which affects many decisions about its design and operation. So the organization has to decide if they are a service provider or a service consumer, digital product vendor, or a combination of these. Now, I also said something else earlier. By role, I was also indicating it could be sponsor, user, or customer, but that is only within the service consumer organization. Similarly, on the service provider side, we might have a deployment manager, release manager, incident manager, and so on. I'll speak about them a little more afterwards. This is a good picture here. We have got a depiction of different organization roles in management, delivery, and consumption of products and services. Now, on the extreme left here, we have technology resources, which are acquired and managed by the vendor. By technology resources, we mean they may be in-house or sourced. And then we have these resources compose the products. You might recollect the definition of a digital product. It is a combination of technology resources. So the same is indicated here. And you can see at the bottom, the vendor builds and manages a digital product. So they are a digital product vendor. And at the top, we see the consumer impacts those digital products. I was saying earlier that the roles within the product vendor and service provider are described in the practice guides. So, for example, in the release management practice guide, we see the release manager role. You might see the incident manager role in the incident manager management practice guide. And similarly, the product vendor roles, we will see them in the ITIL product guide. Here we are concerned with the service consumer roles, which will come up afterwards, such as user, sponsor, and customer. And there are some other universal roles as well, like product manager, practice manager, service delivery manager, and so on. You might be familiar with some of those. These are described in the ITIL Foundation book itself, but these are not part of the exam syllabus. And these are universal roles in product and service management, product manager, practice manager, service delivery manager, and others. So we will be focusing more on consumer organization roles such as customer, user, and sponsor only, apart from the organization roles, which are service consumer, service provider, and digital product vendor. Then, so here we see that the digital products, they enable and support the service offerings. Here, the service provider offers and negotiates, whereas the customer negotiates and accepts. So the service offering will generally specify not only the goods, service actions, and access to resources that are applicable as offerings, but typically they would also specify the value or the outcome or the benefits. You should recollect the service offering is a description of services for a target consumer group. And these are of three types: goods, access to resources, and service actions. The access to resources is more prevalent in the digital world, and the others, like goods and service actions, are minimized in the digital world. So the service offering types, the three types, are actually the service interaction types. Now, if you look at this picture once again, where we have customer impacts the digital products and vendor, the product vendor builds and manages the digital products, whereas the service provider offers and negotiates service offerings, and the consumer negotiates and accepts the service offerings. Now, if I come back to the digital product, for the niche or internal products, the consumer can impact the product itself. What that means is this icon that we see here, the consumer impacts the digital product. What that means is they will impact the product requirements and the design of the product. Specifically, this happens for the niche, unique, or the internal products for internal customers. But for generic products, this will not be the case, but this will be more mass market products. In the mass market situation, the digital product vendor will capture certain mass market feedback through various mechanisms and will not involve them in design. And if I go to the service offerings of the service provider, who will offer and negotiate the service offerings of the three types, and the consumer who will negotiate and accept the specific service offerings. Here, the negotiation and acceptance can be simple for standardized service offerings, but in tailored or customized cases, there will be more to negotiate on both sides before the acceptance from both parties. And these service offerings describe the digital services. And therefore, eventually the service provider will deliver and support the digital services, and the consumer will consume those digital services. So this chain here is very good to know. The technology resources are combined into digital products by the digital product vendor, and the resources themselves can be acquired by an organization from external sources or could be internal as well. Both are possible. Then from digital products, they enable and support service offerings, which are from the service provider. And then eventually the service provider will deliver and support those services, and the consumer will start consuming them, and they will both together co-create value. So let's move on to the next concept here. Now you might recollect the scenario, ITIL car rental scenario. So let's see what's happening there. Max, who is the CIO, he's mentioning that ICR acts as both a provider and a consumer. They deliver services to their customers. At the same time, they rely on their own growing network of partnerships to make this possible. This includes charging network operators for their cars charged to be charged electrically. They have mobile charging services, cleaning providers for the vehicles, and manufacturer of the fully autonomous driverless cars. Now we are moving away from the organization role types, which are basically the digital product vendor, service provider, and service consumer. And now we will focus specifically on the service consumer roles. These are three: customer, user, and sponsor. Let's read them. Customer, the role that defines the requirement for products and services and takes responsibility for the outcome of the service consumption. User, the role that uses services. Sponsor, role that authorizes budget for service consumption. Therefore, the customer is having responsibility for the outcomes because they are the one who decide whether to do something themselves or to procure a service, source a service along with a product. Sponsor, on the other hand, as you can imagine, they are very cost focused. They will have to be. Customer, if I come back to the customer, they will have to understand the user needs of their consumer organization, users of the service and products. And the customer should also know how the service should be like. They will negotiate the contract. They will monitor the performance of the contract. They will have to understand the business and its needs, and they will track cost so that the sponsor cost focus will be supported by the customer. Users are the one using the services. And these roles apply in both personal and business environments. As an individual, let's say I hire a car through a mobile app. So I will be the passenger. So I'm the user of the vehicle. If I'm paying the money for my commute, I'll be the sponsor as well. If I'm the one defining my requirement, for example, I want an economy cab, taxi, or I want a SUV or whatever, then I'm also the customer. And if I'm the one also deciding the outcome, for example, I may be taking the cab to, let's say, to go for an appointment somewhere. So it is me who is deciding the outcome that I would like to be there on time for the appointment. It could be a doctor or a passport office or whatever, visa office or whatever. And then I'm responsible that I pick the right car. I make the booking on time. Otherwise, I cannot blame the car rental for the delay if I book it much later and so on. And of course, the service provider has to support the outcome of the customer. So let's say I take an example. We have an HR portal in a company which will be used by all employees for, let's say, their goal setting or appraisals and so on. And the customer will be there for everybody who is involved. So typically, not all employees, but there may be some people who will be specifying the requirements of the HR portal. And they will also ensure that the benefits or the outcomes from the portal will be achieved. So for example, it could be the HR director and maybe some other senior people in the company. And the sponsor of the HR portal could be the CFO, for example, or maybe it could be the HR director themselves. And so in this case, the customer is responsible for the outcomes, but you can imagine it is not so easy because the portal will be used by all employees, and putting the ball in just the customer's court for the outcomes might not be a good idea because they cannot manage all the employees. A customer might be managing maybe 3 or 4 people maybe in their line authority, and the organization might have 1,000 employees. So therefore, it can become a little challenging to be a customer in such situations. So they may have to communicate extensively and have like an army supporting them to achieve their outcomes with the support of the service provider, of course.